Let's go
Welcome
live.
everyone, we are live. Hello, welcome back to the Rec Hangouts after a short 3-week break. Thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, on our return, Alan Whitford, our usual host, is with a client today, so he can't make it. So I'll be doing my best to have a chat with Bill Boorman, who we've got here today. Thanks for joining us, Bill. Bill's the host of the... Hi, Bill. Bill's the host of the Recruiting Unconferences and founder. Of course, the well-known one here is #TrueLondon, which just took place the other week. I've asked him to talk to us a bit about True London, a bit about the trends. It's the 10th one, I believe, Bill, so it's been going on a few years. It has all sorts of people going along, HR people, techies, suppliers, agency recruiters, consultants and decision makers. So it's a great place for sort of progressive trends in the market. So that's what I want to talk about with Bill. What kind of trends recruitment agency leaders especially should be looking out for, and what's happening in the HR and corporate world. If you want to take part in this conversation, the hashtag's Rec Hangout. Tweet away. Louise and I will be keeping an eye on that. There's also the Q&A app if you're watching on Google+. There's a brand new app as well called, I don't know what it's called, but it's a symbol of some hands, so you can actually register your contentment or dissatisfaction with the show live as it's going along, like a sort of political panel show in the US, I suppose. Bill, fantastic beard. Do you want to start off with perhaps the key themes, the key theme that was being raised at True London, what people are talking about the most, what people are concerned about the most?
I think it's less concern. As always, there's quite a lot of excitement, but I think for me, probably the biggest move or the biggest difference, better you might recognise me now. I guess the biggest difference this time around was a lot more agency interest and participation, which is really healthy. Historically, really, in terms of innovation or what's new or different things that are going on, that's been largely the domain of the corporate recruiters and sources. And this time around, probably about 60% of the people attending were from agencies and some larger agency groups. So I sense that there's a real feeling or a real desire to do some things that are a little bit different. I think what's been happening is the real innovation, both in terms of use of technology and also methodology, ways of working, have been going on with the growing in-house recruiting teams in the past. And that leads to, I suppose, what we could describe as a genuine war for talent, which is where we've got a battle on between agency in the red corner, corporate in the blue corner, chasing the same talent and the same people. And that perhaps there's a recognition of this within the agency sector that we really need to sharpen up on some things and be open to new minds, as well as other things like when we first spoke probably about 18 months ago with the white paper on from transaction to relationship recruiting, and followed that up with a new model agency over what an agency should be. I think at the time there was a lot of kind of skepticism around the need to change of what we were talking about. Now I sense there's a real hunger for that.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So, what kind of is it strategy? Is it technology? What are agencies looking at in the corporate and HR world that they're trying to emulate and perhaps beat, if that's the right word?
Well, I think it's everything really. I think it's a whole thinking around what are we and where do we stand. So there's probably 4 key areas you've got to look at. The first one is sourcing talent. So how effective and innovative you're being about understanding how you're sourcing talent. So this year we improved again the what we have, the Source Lab, which is where we get all the geeks together. It's previously been a geeky domain, and you've been in there, Louise, so you know what I'm talking about. It's been a geeky domain of people who are really kind of a bit out there. I know your developers have really enjoyed that session, because it's been almost a technical developers session over how the internet's structured, where people are hidden, how you do very sophisticated searches, how you hack into certain products, how you might be able to x-ray, for instance, all of LinkedIn to come up with people that would otherwise be hidden to you. It's been all those kind of tricks, and it's been a little bit of a black magic coven really in the past. But this time around, it was hosted by Martin Lee, who's now the EME head of sourcing for Kelly, who are our global sponsors. And that's the starting point, I suppose. More and more people like Martin Robbins, like Martin Lee, are getting mainstream jobs in large agency groups. And more agencies are saying, right, we need to look at sourcing as a discipline. I think historically what we've done in the UK, and it's going to be the topic of a white paper, a colleague white paper soon, what we've done in the past in the UK is very much, excuse me, hired and run resourcing teams. And that's resourcing teams who've been really two things, usually junior recruiters. So I want to join an agency group, I go and spend a year as a resourcer, learn how to source talent, then when I get any good at that, I get promoted to be a not very good consultant for a while. So it's been an entry-level position really, and quite a low-skilled position in that as soon as anyone develops any expertise, they go off and do a different job. And I know certainly from my background and companies that I know, anyone who said, oh, I want to stay around in a resourcing role and develop a level of expertise would have been almost laughed at. Whereas I think now we're beginning to understand the difference between sourcing and resourcing. Resourcing is searching for CVs really and refreshing databases, things like that, whereas sourcing is really searching for people, finding people in hidden places, finding out what communities they belong to, finding out how to identify who works at what company and what they do, and whether they're actively looking for a job or not actively looking for a job. There's a real science and method to it, and you can almost look at it and say the people who are best suited to these internet sourcing roles are not people who would ever make good recruiters, because they have a totally different personality and skill set. And so I think what I witnessed was a lot of agency recruiters coming in saying, okay, we need to find out a little bit more about this science. Really, at the moment, we're all fishing in the same ponds, we're turning up the same people. It's very much a foot race of who is first to the CV, who is first to the candidate, who's the first to get a response from a largely unresponsive collection of profiles on LinkedIn. We need to do something different. So that was a really reassuring trend that more and more people are thinking about sourcing, more and more agencies are setting up sourcing units, more and more recruiting companies are hiring sourcers specifically, or looking at some dedicated training with people like Johnny Campbell at Social Talent to say we actually need to raise our game in this. That I think we're catching up. So that was really positive for me.
That's fantastic to see, and I know a few of our customers for their large agencies there looking at things like sourcing, and the sourcing lab is always very popular, but has got less of a geeky den and more mainstream as Trulondon's moved on, I think, as you say. Off the back of technology trends then, and trends in the kind of, if recruitment agencies are going to get more serious about sourcing over resourcing, then there's going to be a change in the demand of the demand they want from technologies and the kind of technologies they want. So what were you seeing from not just the agency side but all the sectors at Trulondon this year?
Well, I think we're looking at the same things really. We're looking at the same trends. So from a technology point of view, there's four key things that stand out. One is data. So yeah, we're all bored of the term big data. It's quite often badly applied, but I think realistic data, which is okay, we've got, if you think about as a recruitment business, let's say you've been around for 20 years, you've got 1 million CVs or 1 million candidates in your database, you've got somewhere upwards of 5,000-6,000 company records and their hiring records over jobs that they've generated, things that have come up. I'm beginning to really think, actually, instead of constantly hunting for new, let's look at the data we've got. Let's start look for trends. Let's start understanding things properly. So let's be able to do proper analytics, and let's enable recruiters on the front line to be able to be data analysts and make decisions from data, understand data, and be IT experts without them needing to be either. Because that's not generally what a recruiter is. So let's give them the tools that enable them just to ask simple questions in a format that they understand. You know, I compare it to everybody seeking out the Google model of where do we have a single search bar where we ask a logical question in the way that we would ask that question as a human English question, and it gets translated for us and it comes back with an answer in a format that we can understand that tells us the best thing. For instance, the best companies to be targeting, the type of skills, how realistic a job is, time to fill on positions, and whether recruiters should be working on particular assignments because we've got the data in the database, or whether they shouldn't. I'm seeing a lot more recognition of this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is collaboration, free-flowing from what we call APIs. API means your data can flow in and out. It's very easy for things to move about. So as recruiters, like exactly the same thing as the corporate recruiters, are looking to all kinds of other technologies. So you might, for instance, have your LinkedIn recruiter license and a whole bunch of data and information in there. And then you might have a Facebook page which has a job app, like, for example, something like Work for Labs. You might be using a social referral technology like Rollpoint. You might be using a recruitment database. I'll have to say, colleague, as you're here, and I also advise you, but you might have a recruitment database which has been fairly static, like colleagues. So you're ending up with all of these different, anything up to about 20 different silos of data which doesn't communicate, doesn't move between one and the other, when actually it probably should do. So I think what we're seeing is more and more, how do we join up all the technology so that as a recruiter, I mean, one of the things that really stands out to me is we bang on, me in particular, a lot about candidate experience. Very few people talk about recruiter experience. How do we make the recruitment experience better? And if you talk to recruiters about what makes it better, it's create single screens, get all your data in one place. And that's what, from a technical point of view, Open API does. We talk again as a trend, technology trend, about mobility. I don't want to go on about mobile, you know. I'm not trying to be the Adler or anything. I don't want to go on and say, oh, so many million people are going and this is why you should get smartphones and all that kind of thing. I think that's a fairly boring argument. If you don't get the fact that you need to have a mobile strategy, then you're stupid and you don't deserve to stay in business. I think, but what I think the really interesting bit that not enough people are thinking about is mobility. What does it actually mean? Once everyone can be, so for instance, this hangout, I'm coming to you.
Yeah, where are you? Where are you?
Well, I'm in a startup. I'm in the Rollpoint offices in a startup in venture capitalist just off Barkenwell.
Okay.
And the Wi-Fi wasn't great, so I've used the Hangout app for the first time on my phone, which I think in a lot of ways is actually coming across as better quality. So we're thinking about it, and all these things like Hangouts, communication, data, instruction, communication, is what I call mobility. These are the things of how does it actually make a difference. And as a recruiter, if I'm going to be, you know, one of the key things I think we need to be looking at, which I talked about, which got a few people interested, is the hours offices should be open. If I was running a recruitment business now, I would actually close it between the hours of 9 to 5. the doors wouldn't, we wouldn't be open and operating then. We'd operate between 5 and 9 in the morning, which is kind of when the candidates are there, when people are live in social media, when they're away from their desks and away from their jobs.
Any sympathy there from the recruitment agencies? I went to an event about half a year ago on flexible working. Some very good recruitment agencies speaking there who were very open to it, but the audience on the whole, a question was asked: are you going to introduce flexible working off the back of the things you've heard today? And very few were. But this was about half a year to a year
but
ago.
let's be honest, Louis. Recruitment companies are mostly run by hitters, so recruitment companies, for the most part, are run by people who don't trust their employees, who don't trust people who work for them. Yeah, and the reason they do that is most of the people who own or run recruitment businesses have done so on the fact of stealing a business off somebody else who they once worked for. So it's kind of how the business itself populated itself. So we have real restriction over things like data, or over personal branding, over all those kind of things, where the barrier to it is trust, and whether people are open enough to trust their employees. I think really running a recruitment company, if I was setting up a recruitment company tomorrow, there'd be certain things. Number one, nobody would have any hours contracts. So nobody would be employed to work 9 to 5, 5 days, Monday to Friday, or 8 till 6, or 7:30 till 6, as I used to work. None of that. We wouldn't have any hours. Everyone would be targeted on out. Everyone would be employed on outputs. These are the things you need to do. And this is what we're seeing with progressive companies, because I think if I was running a recruitment business right now, and I was considering what is the thing that is going to threaten me the most, and I thought this was pretty clear from the trulondon message from the businesses that were there. Where is my biggest competition going to come from? My biggest competition is not going to come from my competitor down the road. If I'm Blue Arrow, my biggest competition isn't coming from Adecco. My biggest competition is going to come from the fact that technology means it's very, very easy for people to run recruitment companies in their bedroom. It's very easy now, even playing field in terms of sourcing and reaching candidates. Technology means you can talk to clients. It means you can look like a great big company in terms of how you brand yourself, even if you're one person working from your attic or your loft. And I think this is where the competition is coming from. And I think, talking to people who own businesses, unless you develop trust and let people be entrepreneurial, let them develop their own brands, let them work the hours that they need to, providing they're generating the results that they need to, more and more of them are going to go off and be independent recruiters, which is probably where we're going to see the biggest rise in the sector. So I really think you need to do that. I think that's an area where we've just got to trust people to get on, and we've got to be open to the fact that people are going to build personal brands. They are going to be using their own devices to be accessing things. There are some things we can do. There are some things that we can do in terms of security and looking after the business, but most important, the biggest barrier to being able to develop the business is trust. And once we can establish trust, get rid of things like hours, we've always been measured on outputs anyway. I remember, if I'm the top recruiter and I'm the top bidder, I never got fired or shouted at for being late in the office or for leaving early. I kind of got what I wanted. So we always, in reality, measure people by outputs anyway. So let's just concentrate on the outputs and let people do exactly what they want to do, as long as it's legal and ethical. Let people do whatever they want to do to develop the revenue.
Okay, and what other strategies have you seen recruitment businesses employ, and what other what are you seeing in terms of, say, other ways of generating businesses and that kind of area?
Well, I think more people are coming open to this. The last white paper that we produced was just an example of 15. Since then, I've had another 15, 20 companies come to me and say, yeah, we used to be an agency and we're doing something different. But big things like talent mapping, consultancy, providing just a sourcing service, renting recruiters out by the hour to do particular jobs. It might say, right, let's look at your process. We can do your sourcing for you. We can do your vetting for you. We can manage your brand. I'm hearing more people doing things like saying, actually, we'll source candidates to companies. So we'll find the people that you want. We'll get them in the talent pool. You can hire as many as you want. More talent mapping was really kind of pioneered by a company called TalentWorks. Northampton business now got 5 offices. We're the first people to do that. Talent mapping, lots of things that recruiters are very good at, which is generating revenue, not from placements. So I think we're seeing more trends around that way of, okay, how do we actually go out? How do we actually go out there and generate more? What are all the ways we could generate money? One of the things I talked about in one of the sessions I was talking about in True London is I went to see somebody talking about innovation or real innovation, and it wasn't somebody from a recruiting background or technology background, really. So they were talking about a different type of innovation. They were talking about innovation in local authorities and councils and so on. And one of the stories they talked about I thought was really interesting was that it only took a time of austerity for us to figure out that we could turn half of the lights off in the streets, and we could save millions of pounds by doing that. They said we actually needed to be virtually a bankrupt country before we actually thought about it. And if we look at that a different way, if we don't need these lights, we've been wasting millions of pounds a year on year and year. And the point he made was the time to start trying things and experimenting is when you're not under pressure for it not to fail, because your business is doing quite well. So I think you find that a lot of what we hear from people is, well, when we're speaking to agencies about change, well, it's not broke, don't fix it, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, we've been doing things this way for so long, we're generating more revenue and more business, we don't need to look to change. And the time they look to change is when the wells run dry, when there's no candidates left, or when they're just not making any money, or they're back to the wall. And when you're under that kind of pressure, and I've been there myself before, when you're under that pressure to make it work, you start getting to the, hi Mark, I see you've just popped in, you get under that pressure to make it work, when actually what I think we should be doing is, instead of getting under the pressure to make it work, we should be making decisions and experimenting and innovating, trying new models, trying different things when we're not under the financial pressure to make it work, because then we can just be open-minded. We can work on the Google principle, you know, fail often. Anyone who doesn't make mistakes in Google gets a warning to say they've been unproductive if things aren't working. So fail often because you're trying stuff. Fail fast and learn quickly, don't repeat your mistakes. And I think if we're going to adopt that attitude of saying, you know what, at the moment, I think we're in a false ground, because most recruitment companies are doing better than they have done historically, are generating better revenues than we have done for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's created a situation that the market's really good, whereas my suspicion is that the overall available market is shrinking significantly. We've just had a really crap 4 or 5 years, so you know it's kind of not difficult. It's kind of like a football team saying we're doing better this year because we're not getting relegated. I think it's kind of like that in the agency world at the moment. So I think this is the perfect time to be experimenting with new models, new ways of doing things, new technology, trying new things that could be charged for when we're not actually under the pressure to generate the revenue.
We've got Mark who's just joined us. Mark, I think we're getting a bit of echo from
yes, I'm sorry. I was just listening to you guys for the last 5-10 minutes and hadn't sort of joined you officially on the Hangout.
Don't worry, well,
switch it off.
Mark's our co-host, co-sponsor from the F10 Group.
Part-time, unreliable co-host.
Well, yeah, we've been doing all right so far, I think, Mark.
Well, I think you're in good hands with Mr. Boorman.
Mark, do you want to come in here? You've been listening for about 10 minutes. You're a founder of an agency. Is any of this? Does any of these ideas appeal to you that you're hearing about from TruLondon, or is it all up in the air, sort of, all hypothetical?
I suppose the three things that I'm thinking about, just listening to Bill there, were how he would run a recruitment agency if he was setting up from scratch, giving people the opportunity to work what hours they wanted and measure them against performance and output, rather than giving them KPIs and goals and targets to work to in the traditional sense. I think that's an interesting concept, and I think that comes hand in hand with the second point that he was making, that people now have the technology to be able to sort of do the same job as an established recruitment company working from home. And so don't those two things sort of come hand in hand? And also, aren't we following in the tails of what's happening in the US and their model in that respect, which is far more fragmented, and there's far fewer sort of large recruitment organisations against the sort of model that sort of established itself here. But I'm interested to ask Bill. Bill, what do you think then is the main challenge if individuals can take this technology and do this from home? What about clients taking the technology and doing it for themselves?
Well, I mean, that's really what they've been doing, first of all. So the big trend, first of all, has been people doing it directly. We've seen a lot of that over the last 2 or 3 years. And this is what I mean by, I think we're in a fool's paradise within the agency sector at the moment. I listen to our great chiefs in APSCO and the REC patting themselves on the back and saying recruitment's never been better and we're making so much money and all the rest of it. And I really think it's emperor's new clothes. I really do, because I think we're coming out of recession, which means there's more jobs, there's more business about than there has been for 4 or 5 years. So definitely, companies like yours and lots of others, the financial performance looks pretty healthy compared with maybe what it has done over the last 2 or 3 years for lots of businesses. But I don't have exact data on this, so I'm open to be shot down on it. But I actually think the available market in terms of people who are willing to go to recruitment companies or put the work out, it's probably dropped by something like 40%. So I think the total revenue was dropped in available revenue, and I think that market's only going to shrink. So what I come down to okay, if you are running a recruitment business, how do you compete with the fact that anyone can go off and set up on their own, that they've got the technology, they've got the capability? You just have to be a place where they want to work. And I think for a lot of recruitment agencies that I see that are, and believe me, I ran enough of them for kind of lots and lots of years. We've had factories where we've almost it's been like battery heads for recruiters of put them in a cubicle, give them a phone, tell them to get on it, make your 30 calls, send out your 10 CVs, get your interviews going, and it's been very much a hire and fire, bash environment. Yeah, we all go out and celebrate, drink loads of beer, and we have lots of fun. And other times it's a horrible place to work when things aren't going well. I think we've got to start creating places where people want to work, because before you worked within a recruitment company because you had to, now you don't have to if you're a real good performer. So I think we've got to start thinking about we've really got to start thinking about changing the way in which people are working and changing the environments that we have, how we're managing people, because we've got to have in places where people want to work. Otherwise, that's a problem.
Changing the environment is one thing, isn't it? But in terms of the strategy going forward for recruitment consultancies to continue to be effective and to add value to the customers they're working with, doesn't that involve upping their game? And I know it's a commonly used phrase and not many people know really what they're quantifying when they say that, but I mean with regards to adding more value to the recruitment process, getting more involved?
No, adding more value to the adding more value to the recruiters. I think it. I think it's more fundamental than that. I think we've got to talk with equal relish and passion about recruiter experience as we do about candidate experience as an industry. And I think it's one of the things we've got to think about and address. And when I look at what we're talking about from a lot of recruitment companies, even to the highest levels, even if I look at REC and APSCO, what we're training people, what we're teaching new managers, what we're portraying as being the way to run or manage a recruitment business, it's at best last century, it's at best 20th century thinking, and I think we've got to change our whole trust, flexibility, openness to people building personal brands, maybe going off and doing something else, allowing people to be entrepreneurial within their own operations to make it worth people wanting recruiter experience, making it worth people wanting to work for us rather than having to work for us.
Mm-hmm. What about, the end of the day, it's the customer that pays the bill, so don't they have to buy into whatever we're doing?
That's absolute rubbish, Mark, honestly. I'm sorry to jump down on that, but this idea that the customer pays the bills, the customer writes the checks.
Yeah, what I was going to say was that the customer that pays the bills, does it not help if they buy into the philosophy that we're trying to execute within our businesses? So that if we're trying to get our recruiters to feel like they can add more value and give them the tools and the training to enable that to happen, that the customer also has to buy into this?
I think one of the things I think we've got to do is stop overall thinking about customers, candidates, recruiters, because I think we set up a certain circle about how we deal with each other. And what we have to look at, and this might sound a bit tree huggy and all the rest of it, is just that everyone's a stakeholder, and everyone's got an equal stakeholder, and they've all got their bit to play, and they should all have an equal contribution. And what I've found is when we try and build communities of people, some of whom hire sometimes, some of whom look for jobs sometimes, some of whom just want advice or some help or some guidance or some help along the way. When we build those kind of communities and we don't try and put people in boxes in quite an old-fashioned way, that's when we begin to build powerful businesses, because people do business. There's two things that really stand out. One is, and I've trained this in the past, when I hear people talking about candidate control or client control as a term, right? A very well-used industry term. When we talk about anything to do with control, for me, that just strikes me of the old workhouse.
Well, isn't it the new word? Isn't the new word influence?
That's totally what it is. Influence, being real support. Control suggests command and control. And I think we've got to get control. But also things like, if you've got to sell a job to a candidate, the match is wrong. Fundamentally, for me,
I think we're heading in the right direction here with what I was trying to say, and this is that when I go in and I talk to companies, and I've got a software business as well as a traditional recruitment agency business, and we go in and we evaluate their recruitment processes, and there has to be an appetite from the client side to want to change the way that they recruit, because a lot of clients, let's be honest, are quite lazy, and they quite like the traditional way where they just toss a very bog standard job description across to a recruiter and let them get on with it. And actually really stink with a lot of clients that I've been speaking to recently, where they're now being forced to make change.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I think recruitment companies provide a crap service because people demand a crap service.
Yeah,
and tend to reward it. Tend to reward the people who don't do a thorough job. They push you on margin and price to mean that effectively you can't commercially do the job or spend the time on it that you would want to in terms of resources of people. So I'm open on to both sides of that argument. But the reality is, the customer may not, the client, the check signer, the fee payer may not care how you source people, but the candidate cares about how they're sourced, how they're dealt with, and what's going on. And the resource of what people are willing to do and what they're willing to accept from recruiters as candidates is changing significantly, probably more so than it is from the check signers side at the moment. So I think we need a whole reversal over what we're doing, and I also think it's also an education process of if we asked the I think we're back to faster horses sometimes. If we ask the customer, remember Henry Ford said, if we ask customers what they wanted, they say faster horses, which is generally what happens. You ask check signers what they want, it's faster, cheaper. Generally, is the answer.
Depends which stakeholder you ask, Bill. If you ask the finance department, they want cheaper. If you ask the business owner, they want better. And if you ask the HR person, they want it more efficiently.
Yeah, so I think we have to go out and ask everyone and really push for understanding. Right? Okay, look, we've just got to challenge stuff. I think you've got to look at it and say, in our business, and we've got to start this every week. We've got to say, in our business, what's something we could change this week? What's something we could do different? Not because we have to, just because we want to try something. See what happens. Let's see what comes back from the business. And I think the other thing that we need to be open to doing is allowing people to fail. I don't think we allow people to fail enough in recruitment businesses.
I agree.
So allow people to fail. And let them learn and be successful from that.
My concern is that we can create the best environment in the world for recruiters to thrive, but if we don't educate the client and influence the client to meet us halfway, then the whole process falls over. So how's about this as an idea for a radical recruitment trend then, that recruitment businesses start to influence more powerfully with the clients that they're working with, assess them, and move away from clients that aren't prepared to meet us in a professional manner that will allow us to do business and to trade with them.
Yeah, I think you should sack clients often. No, I think you should sack clients all the time. I don't have a problem with that. But then that's why I think when you're taking a wider look of saying it's all stakeholders, it's a community of people, of which sometimes some of them are hiring, some of them are not. You will tend to do work with or concentrate on the ones who are most in common and make it easier for you and are most open to it. Yeah. And that's what I think is going to happen. So I think let's just build communities. Let's not go looking for clients and candidates, and then the way in which we make money out of those people will become obvious once we connect with them.
Okay,
so I think we've got about 5 minutes left. So.
Yeah, well, where are we at? We're 22, so I'll do a quick reset. We're with Bill Boorman and Mark Stevens at the moment. If anyone wants to ask a question, we've got 5, 10. Well, we've got 20, but we'll wrap it up pretty soon if there's no more questions coming in. But if you've got any questions, you're watching on the Rec Hangout. Use hashtag Rec Hangout on TweetDeck or use the Google Plus Q&A app. I just want to do a shout out to Bernadette, who has been a long-standing supporter of the show and viewer of the show, our favourite viewer, and
signed T-shirts on the way.
Yeah, fan club, the Rec Hangout fan club. And you tweeted earlier that this was going to be your last.
In Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Bernadette.
Yeah, your last official Rec Hangout this AM, at least for now, which sounds quite ominous. So I hope you come back. But Bernadette asked, how can you seriously make the move from individual recruiter to a small SM agency. I don't know if that means social media agency or a small agency.
Small medium enterprise, probably.
Yeah, or small medium enterprise. That could be it, Mark. If you guys don't mind answering that, I think that would be good. And I'd like to shout out to Lisa, who's been watching, and we've got who else is on here? We've also got Toby. Thanks for your comments. Mark's back again. Hi, Mark, and Audra as well. Thanks all for watching. Let us know if you have any questions. Right, to Bernadette's question. Do you have any comments on that, guys?
Yeah, I think it's much. I've built collaborative teams of independent recruiters and let them work together. You know, I think that's reasonably easy. I do a lot of work with startups which work in a very collaborative way, where using collaborative tools like the Google Hangouts, Google Docs, people able to work. I think the biggest thing we've got to building, we need to start looking at it and saying, really, work or communities or teams used to be about locations. You had to have an office to house people, somewhere to put people, because there was a necessity to do that. I think that necessity's gone now. So I think it's a case of, if you want to build up a team of SME or small recruiters, great opportunity to say, let's get people who have a shared passion, get them to connect, get them to work together, and get them to work together and work from there. And just find people who've got things in common.
I'll just add into that from a commercial perspective. Obviously, if you are going to take people on and you're going to pay them a salary, if this is what the question was, Bernadette, about growing a business, you've got to make sure that the pool of clients that you're working with are providing you with enough opportunities so that if you brought additional resources into the business, that you're actually going to make more money than what you would do on your own. And it's a simple mathematical question like that before considering starting to grow. Have we got any other questions coming through, Louis?
There is one, but it's not really to do with trends on the LinkedIn Recruiter Certificate, whether it's worth it. But I'd advise Audra going back to the LinkedIn one we did a few.
No is the answer to that.
No, okay, there we go. No. But we did a good LinkedIn one, didn't we, a few months back, Mark?
The answer to that is no. You'll get a LinkedIn certificate, and then they'll change it again, and it'll be out of date in 3 months' time. So don't pay the dark side.
There's your answer. Bill, do you want to wrap up really on your thoughts on trends?
Just I think it's challenging things. I'm glad some people are coming back and saying they that they think that they're not convinced by my argument that if you've got to sell a job, it's not a good match. But for me, if you're going candidate centric first, you're understanding what the candidate's passions are. You should really just be reflecting a job that says this is what you're really looking for. You've got to shoehorn people into things. It's really it might make you a placement, it might make you some money, but it's not, and it might make you successful. It might make you successful for a while. I'm very unsurprised, to hear recruiters, Louise Triance again coming back and saying I'm not convinced by that. But if you're having to sell people to do things, we're in a world now where nobody wants to be sold to. Everybody wants to, but everyone wants to buy. People want to move jobs. People want to get information. We can't. We're also in a world of high connectivity where everyone's connected. People already know the companies they want to work for. They already know the types of jobs. They're already connected with people. So I think the role of the recruiter needs to be quite different, and we need to stop thinking we're dealing with people and company of strangers, and that we've got to sell things and make things happen. Yes, we will make placements. Will we build a sustainable business forever through selling? I don't think so. And I'm hoping.
You just got mute, Bill.
Are you thinking, Butte?
I'm not
Bill?
surprised some people don't.
His beard's got stuck in his microphone.
Bill, you had a bit of sound problems right at the end there, but thanks so much for joining us. And Mark, thanks for coming on. I know you've been busy. Thank you everyone who's tweeted us. And I'd just like to say in a couple of weeks we'll have another Rec Hangout show, same time. I believe, although it's not completely definite yet, that we'll have Martin Dangerfield on, who's very well known in the recruitment space, has a fantastic blog that you should look up if you're a recruiter. We'll be talking about using content to engage candidates and clients in the recruitment space, so using online content and using a website more effectively. I will obviously get out to everyone who signed up to the Rec Hangout, Louise Triance from UK Recruiters, notes from the Rec Hangout, which will sum up some of the items that Bill talked about today and Mark's talked about, and also link to a few blog articles that are relevant, and no doubt a few elements from Trulondon. I'll let you all know for sure what the next Rec Hangout will be if it's not Martin. Just keep a lookout on the colleague blog. Or on the YouTube, on our Google Plus channel rather. Thanks again, Bill. I'll speak to you soon. We'd love to have feedback again sometime. Thanks, Mark. I'll see you next time, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be there on time. Thanks, Louis.
Take care. Bye-bye.